What we haven't talked about yet is the special character called the null. Um, what happens is that when you create a database, and if we scroll back up here in a little bit and we look at the definition of this thing, one of the values to see is whether a null column, meaning no, it's either going to be no or yes, meaning whether null values are acceptable or not. Is there a way to set the environment to set clip binary or long fields when using select? I'm not sure what you mean by clip. Do you mean like to truncate them or trim them or something? So that you can't read them. So you're selecting them, you don't want them to be read. You can encrypt. Did you mean encrypt them? So it doesn't explode off the field. You can use trim values to reduce the size, but what I would recommend is that what you would do is you can put the query to a file, and we're going to show you how to do that with file I/O. You'd have to use right or left, I think, or substring, John. The other option would be to simply not really do it from the SQL command prompt here. We're using this right now, but the way you would really do it would be you could output it to a CSV file and open it in Excel. You could also use the query. There's a query tool that comes with MySQL, and I don't have it installed, where you can use it. And I think that's got some easier capabilities for downloading files, downloading data from a query. So this is not really the best place to actually be querying a bunch of data that you want to analyze. It really isn't. You're better off writing the query and exporting the results of the query to an Excel file, and then use Excel to kind of slice and dice it, if that's what you're getting at. Okay, so the null value just means whether it'll allow a null or not. A null is not nothing. Well, a null is nothing, actually. It means there's no value. It's not an empty string or a zero. It means there's literally no value, and it's just called a null value, meaning no value. So those are allowed. If you've done any programming in any of the programming languages, you probably know what a null is in a programming language as well. It means it hasn't been given a value. And the database, you can specify whether that should be allowed or not. And we did that right here in the create table command, where we said assumed that the data can be null unless you say otherwise, by saying not null. Now, if you say it's a primary key, you don't have to say not null, because primary keys are not allowed to be null automatically. So you don't have to say not null. Just saying that it's a primary key means it can't be null. But for the date and the phone number, we did not put the not null there, so that means no value is required. It's an optional field. Okay, we are going to look at some very simple queries now for getting data out. The simplest one, and we've already seen this one a little bit, is select star from table, which means take every column and every row from the table and display it. Now, there's only one customer here, so that's not a lot of data. If I go back to my customer table, we'll see we got a little more. Mostly nulls, but we got a little more data. And if this were to run over the screen, it would be ugly. It would scroll, and it would not scroll well. So that's why you would want to output it to a file. And we'll show you some file I/O as well. Now, you can put some limits on these things, and before we do that, let's put a little more data in there. Let's go ahead and take that one. Now we got 2. You can put some other options on this thing. For example, you can put a filter. The where clause allows you to put a filter on it. In this particular case, I'm saying only give me all the data for where customer ID equals 1. So right now you can see we got 2 rows in there, but if I do that, I only get customer ID 1. Same would happen if I were to put customer ID 2. And if I put customer ID 3, which doesn't exist yet, I get nothing. There's nothing there to find. You can specify also only certain columns. The star, the asterisk means give me everything. And you can also specify the order in which they come out. So normally if I were to do this, I get that and it's in last name order. Now I could reverse the order and say I want it in descending order. The default is ascending order, which means start with the lowest and go to the highest. Descending order is just opposite. It means start with the highest and go to the lowest. Normally for an alphabetical list, you want to go in the default ascending order from A to Z. Those are some simple queries you can do there. The next, what we call DML language command, data manipulation command lang. How to specify a range of IDs? Yes, you can. I would get to that, but I can show you right now. You would say where customer ID is between 2 and 4, for example, would be a range. Oops. It didn't work too well. 2 and 4, for example. Now there's only there's no 3 or 4, so it only shows you 2, but that would be the range. And we're going to get to that as well, by the way. Okay, so the update command allows you to update the table, to change the data in it. Set some column equal to some value, and you can comma separate them, right? And you can put filters on it that can have very complex and or type logic as well. This example here would set the customers for every row in the customer table to 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you see before we had only null values, but if I go back and now I say select star from, the problem is here is that it set every phone number to 555 1, 2, 3, 4, which is generally not what you want to do. You almost certainly want to do it only for a certain column. Now this thing here has got a little bit of an issue because that should have a different phone number for starters. Let me just change this number here to off. Make it 1212 instead, so you see the number actually changes. And this time it said only do it for customer ID 2, set it to 5551212. So when I execute this query again, this phone number should have changed. And it did, because the update command did it just for that one column. There's also delete command that will delete data from it. Again, with the update statement and the delete statements, really with all the statements, you almost always want to have a where clause on it. It's extremely rare that you want to update every column in a table. That's extremely rare. So it's almost certainly you want to put a where clause in there. Same thing with delete. It's extremely rare that you want to delete everything from a table. So that's extremely rare. It would almost always be a where clause of some kind. So we'll look at that. Now, this particular case, if I were to delete customer 2, then we go back and we do our select again, we see now that customer 2 is gone. Deleted from the table. The describe command like this, which can be shortcutted DESC, just shows you the structure of the table. Now, for the world database, does anyone have trouble executing that world database? I've already done this command here, the source. But this would essentially open up this file and execute everything in there. You have to do that for your first lab. So if anyone's having trouble doing that, let me know. Okay? Any questions on this basic intro here? Okay, so let's Kind of went through. Well, what we really have to do here now is client server. So let's go. Okay, take a little while. Okay, so we'll go through this. The client server architecture is pretty simple. I don't really want to go into a lot of detail on it. Get some weird characters in the script, that's probably okay, so long if after you're done with it and you execute those queries at the end, everything in the lab, everything comes out correct, you're probably okay. I wouldn't worry about those weird numbers. Okay, so we've got a database server, which in MySQL is called MySQL13b, and that kind of is a throwback to the old Unix world, where it runs in the background. Now, if you download AMP, you can see it running right there. You've got a control panel to do this. In the old Unix world, it was done a little differently, but on Windows and in the graphical world, it's pretty straightforward to see it running or not. The host is the physical machine that it's running on. In this case, it's my laptop. And for you, most of you as well, it's going to be your personal computer or laptop as well. That's what it's going to be. Okay. Seems to be taking a while. Let me open this locally, it'll go faster. Don't seem to have a local copy of it. Yeah, that's not going to work. Seem to be having some technical difficulties here, folks. Let's give it a second.